All right, welcome everybody. Let's start by setting our motivation. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from desire for friends and hatred for enemies. Just letting that settle in. That immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, immeasurable equanimity. And then refuge in bodhicitta if you feel comfortable. Otherwise, just connecting with altruism. Sangye churon sogi chunamla janchu padu dani kapsuchi dagi chunyen gi pe sonam gi drola penche sangye drupa sho sangye churon sogi chunamla janchu padu dani kapsuchi dagi chunyen gi pe sonam gi Rola benje sange drupa sho sange churon sogi chunamha janchu badu dane kapsuchi dagi chunyangi pe sonamgi rola benje sange drupa sho. Letting those ideas connect. Your spiritual refuge, your most altruistic intention, the development of your fullest potential in order to benefit all. Okay. So today we'll go ahead and just start with what the practice day and the quiz is going to be like, just so we get that right off the top of the to-do list, so everyone's oriented. So this will only take a couple minutes. So bear with me. It's just logistics, basically. So the practice day on Saturday, May 4th, the first part is a continuation of this course and open to absolutely everybody doing this course. And it's from 1 to 3:15 Pacific in person at Ocean of Compassion or online. And during this time, it's mainly going to be meditation, 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 but not like in a giant block without a break. Okay. So don't worry, it's not going to be this whole time without any stretches or anything. So basically, we'll do a series of meditations reinforcing what we've already learned, and then just a brief time to workshop those meditations and see if anything's coming up that you want to develop further. But mainly, it'll be meditation day, not a teaching day. And then the second half of that day is just for people that are interested in discovering Buddhism certification. So if you're not interested in that certification process, then you're done for the day at 3:15. Yeah. So those of you that are up for it or in the mood to kind of see if this process is something you want to engage with, it'll go from 3:30 to 4, and in person at Ocean of Compassion or online. And basically, a Word document is going to get sent to you. You fill it out in the allotted time, as well as a checklist and a deadline for the other certification requirements to sign and send to Ocean of Compassion. So everyone will do it at the same time and get given the Word document at the same time. And once the exams have been checked, if you passed, then you have finished your first step towards getting Discovering Buddhism certificate, which can then lead to further teacher credentials within FPMT. And if you fail miserably, it's not the end of the world. Just watch the watch the videos again, get your information clearer, and do the test again. And that can be organized through Bay and myself, probably is the easiest way. So if for some reason you don't remember anything, it's not like school, right? Because the main point is to actually understand the main concepts for your own practice to then go forward and help others. I guess an important thing to flag is having a Discovering Buddhism certificate within our organization doesn't guarantee that you'll get further credentialed because it's not just academic things that they're looking at. They're looking at also ways of being and references about how you are in community and stuff like that. But it certainly goes a long way. So if you're interested in becoming a meditation teacher in the future, this is a really beautiful step and optional. So, any questions about the practice day half or the test half of that day on that Saturday? So,
I actually have a question. Would the test be open or closed book?
closed. Closed, but honor system, right? It's not like I can check and see, oh no, you have a window open. It's really like, what do you remember? And it's not going to be tiny, tiny details. It's going to be the main themes that we've talked about. It's not going to be all the tiny minutia and so don't worry, you'll be fine. And a lot of it'll be like true or false or multiple choice and just a couple little like right from scratch. Yeah. Any other questions about that process? Yeah, so anyway, first half is for everybody. It's going to be all meditation with just brief moments to check in about that meditation. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Hello. That there will be, of course, a prize for the best joke. Will there?
Well, that's a good idea. I'll take it on consideration.
Thank you. Perfect.
Also memes.
Yes.
Radio. All right, so we'll jump into it today. Today's the last day we're going to be going into minds and mental factors. Then we're going to pivot and look at other ways of looking at consciousness. So I'll put up the PowerPoint just so that we're all oriented again. Here's what we've been looking at, okay? This is hopefully getting some sense of familiarity. Yeah, this is just the worldview. It's not necessarily indicating what you do with that information yet. This is talking about the basis or reality in a relative sense. Yeah, it's not talking about ultimate reality. It's talking about conventional truth. So if we look at all phenomena, we can categorize them into permanent and impermanent. Then we shift and we look just at impermanent. Impermanent things can be divided into form, consciousness, and non-associated composites. We're just looking at consciousness. Consciousness can be looked at in terms of the functions of the primary consciousnesses or the functions of the mental factors, the states of mind. So this is what we've been talking about the last few weeks. So just kind of like make it simple for yourself. Okay, we're talking about impermanent consciousness, and right now we're just looking at mental factors. In particular, we're going to look at the virtuous mental factors. Okay, but just so you have the context, this is part of a bigger picture. Yeah, okay. Any questions before we go into anything new? Just as you're looking at that slide that we've seen now each week, is there parts of that that you wanted to clarify before we move on?
I have a question.
Sure.
Would you quickly be able to sum up, go over the non-associate composites?
Sure.
I read about it, but it's still here.
Yeah, and it's not particularly important. And right now we're looking at consciousness anyway. But non-associated composites is a category of things that is neither form nor consciousness because it's labeled in dependence upon both. For example, a person, right? A person is not form, a person is not consciousness. A person is labeled in dependence upon a form and consciousness. Yeah, so non-associated composites is just a fancy way of saying that. We can also talk about things that are not so tidily explained like that, like time. Time is a non-associated composite as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it's good to know that those categorizations exist. And also, what are you going to do with that information to become a better person? That's up to you. Probably zero in on consciousness is going to be the most efficient way. But it is interesting to even just sit with that idea that a person is not form or consciousness, but is labeled independence upon form and consciousness. There's a lot to dig into there, yeah, and it's going to come in handy later when you do the teachings on ultimate truth. So it's yeah, it's interesting to know. And I think also interesting to look at the fact that consciousness is under the heading of things that are impermanent, meaning changes moment to moment, because then you're starting to understand that impermanence in Buddhism doesn't necessarily mean finite, right? It's changing moment to moment, but can have an eternal continuity, an eternal continuum. So changing throughout that whole duration, but could last forever. And that permanent things don't change. Okay, that makes sense. They're static. But just because it's permanent doesn't mean it's eternal, right? It's just while it's living, it's not undergoing momentary change. Yeah, so it's just kind of like getting used to Buddhism uses similar words to how we use words in the world, but there's just a slight nuance that needs to be checked so we don't assume that we know what we're talking about just because we know the word, because it's used in very specific ways in Buddhism. So that's a fun part of all of our journey, is just relearning words. Yeah. Okay. All right. So here's the big picture, and then we simplify to here. Okay. So we've looked at the omnipresent mental factors and the object ascertaining mental factors, particularly in the context of meditation. And then we looked at the variable mental factors. Today we're going to look at the virtuous and non-virtuous. But just to review, these variable mental factors, sleep, regret, investigation, and analysis. Sleep is sleep. We know about sleep. And to make sleep virtuous, you need to motivate before you fall asleep. It takes a very strong, lucid dreamer to make sleep virtuous once you've already fallen asleep, or to have very, very strong ethics that kick in even when you're asleep. So just kind of a side note on sleep is interesting to look at. So sleeping out of attachment and laziness is destructive. Sleeping because the body is tired is neutral. Sleeping with the intention to resume our compassionate activities after resting is virtuous. But a little bit more on sleep. It's a really good sign that if while you're dreaming, you're about to do something non-virtuous and decide not to. That's considered quite a good sign. Yeah, so I don't know if you have a scary nightmare and you're being chased by an axe murderer, and then you find an axe and you're like, haha, I'm gonna kill you. Oh, but killing is wrong. And you put it down. That's a really good sign. Yeah. Or, you know, if there's like an opportunity for adultery and you say no, you know, or any number of things that could come up in dreams that are speaking to old habits in your consciousness, but that you're not giving in to them, is really a good sign. If you have seemingly inauspicious signs in dreams, like for example, like throwing up or something gross, that actually might be a good sign. It might be a sign that you've purified something. So there's a whole kind of genre of Buddhism, of dream analysis, that usually falls under the heading of Tibetan medicine. And Tibetan medicine talks a lot about how disturbances in the body can trigger disturbances in the mind. It's an interesting subgenre, but if you're curious about Tibetan Buddhist dream analysis, look into the Tibetan medicine genre of the teachings, because that's where you'll get details. Yes, so then lucid dreaming, plan to be awake while sleeping. That's tricky. Yeah, plan to be awake while sleeping, plan to be awake to yourself and to your own motivations and choices, to know that you're dreaming while in the dream. But with practice, it can really start to happen and you can actually have very productive dreams. But even if you're not able to do that, going to sleep with your last few thoughts being positive colors your whole sleepscape, and that time then isn't wasted in terms of the spiritual path. So it's very normal for people to get themselves sleepy through semi-dissociative methods like binge watching something, or things that keep the mind quite active, like reading something. And it's very hard to untangle yourself from habits like that, especially if they're habits you've developed over your whole life. To just go to sleep and think, may I be of benefit to all sentient beings? May I remember my dreams while I'm sleeping? May I know the dreams to be dreams? You wake yourself up. Yes. Or you're just like, huh, that seems like a lot of work. All right. But if you can slowly, maybe cold turkey from your old strategies isn't reasonable, but is there ways to make the last few things you come into contact with more healthy? Yeah. So if you're reading something that is positive. If you're watching something that is positive. Don't watch a documentary on climate change right before bed unless it inspires you to be beneficial when you wake up. It probably just make you depressed, right? And then your whole sleep is colored by that. Don't go to bed reading, I don't know, vampire novel, because then you'll have a whole dreamscape of vampire events. It's not useful. Right. So whatever you can do to start reconditioning yourself differently, it is worth our while because we spend so much of our time sleeping. Yeah. And that time is not absent of karma. We're creating karma during that time. So to make it more virtuous, give yourself a chance by launching your sleep with more positive things. Okay. Regret. Regret is variable. This is quite interesting. So regret regards to an appropriate or inappropriate action that we have performed of our own accord or under pressure as something we do not wish to repeat. So what you would assume regret means, regretting negativities is virtuous, but regretting our constructive actions is non-virtuous. The reason I'm flagging this is because what can happen when you're on the spiritual path is that you increase your positive activities, which is great, but you do it too much too fast. And then you regret, or you have a backlash or a rebellion. And so having the kind of the humility to pace yourself is something that we all have to learn, and it can be really difficult. But it's a little bit like if you made a donation to, I don't know, Doctors Without Borders for $100, and then you realized you actually couldn't quite afford that and you regretted it. That is a non-virtuous state of mind. So if you gave $20, you would have been happy about the whole $20 and might repeat that action of generosity again and again and again and again. But because you overestimated how much you could actually give, you kind of ruined the momentum of your generosity, and you're less likely to do it again. So having that kind of humility or that spiritual maturity that says, I'd like to give this amount, but I think I can actually only give this amount, is the sort of attitude that we want to bring so that we don't fall into that regretting positive things. Does that make sense? Right? The same is true of time, right? You think you can offer this amount of time to somebody or something, but actually only have the stamina for this, then, you're going to have that backlash feeling, that regret feeling, and then you won't likely do it again. So underestimate underestimate when you're doing positive things, how much you can do, how deeply you can do, because creating gentle, small, sustainable steps is what will actually help you achieve progress. Yeah. Thoughts on that? Does that ring true so far in your life? Sometimes we can make a dramatic change with a dramatic action, but more likely small, incremental, sustainable pacing. Yeah, so we don't want to regret negativities. Yes, Venerable, go ahead.
Hi. What came to mind was Tonglen, and sometimes you want to take on like all the suffering of the world, or like, all these events that are going on in the world, but then I actually can't do that yet. Like it just makes me uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
so like, just taking on like small things and then building.
Yeah, that's an interesting nuance to bring in because of course Tonglen is an attitude shift and you're adopting the attitude that you're able to do more than you can. But even that attitude itself has a bandwidth that you may or may not be able to live up to, right? So, Tonglen making suffering voluntary, right? And then wanting to take on the suffering of your friends, your family, then your coworkers, then your neighborhood, then your country, then the whole world, then all sentient beings, then the whole universe. It's crazy, right? It's crazy talk. But we know it's good for overcoming self-cherishing and developing cherishing others. But what can happen is you get a little bit of a practice of it happening and you get inspiration and then you hit resistance. And when you hit that resistance, that self-knowing is invaluable because you see where your stuckness is or where you see where your barriers to developing bodhicitta are. But it's a tricky one, Tonglen, because you are consciously overestimating your ability on purpose in terms of attitude, but not in terms of ability, right? In terms of ability, you already know you can't take on the suffering of the whole world. Yeah, so it becomes a little bit more of a delicate dance, but I think that when you're trying any meditation, even one that's simpler than that, even something like compassion, and you're trying to develop compassion together with a sense of equanimity, and you notice you don't want to have compassion for so-and-so in your life who hurt a vulnerable person, or you don't want to have compassion for so-and-so political figure who seems to be doing damaging things. Knowing that is essential, but giving in to that is not what we're talking about in terms of regret, right? You're not going to have regret for sort of an attempt to have more compassion than you do today. Let's just see. It's not a verbal action. It's not a physical action. It's just a mental action of, what if I was to think for a moment, may you be free of suffering? That's less likely to trigger regret. It's more likely to trigger resistance. So those fine hairs is tricky, isn't it? But the easiest thing about regret when we talk in Buddhism is regretting negativities. Yeah, and regretting negativities is healthy and good so long as it doesn't fall into guilt. Yeah, because guilt is identifying with the mistake rather than identifying the mistake. And that distinction is going to be the story of our lives, perhaps. But how do you identify a mistake without identifying with the mistake? That's the key to making this kind of regret a really positive thing. Yeah, so you said a critical thing to someone, you hurt their feelings, they're really taking it to heart, you wounded someone with your words, and now you're generating regret. I wish I hadn't said that. That's excellent. But if you think, I wish I hadn't said that, and therefore I am also very, very bad, you've gone too far. You've identified with. Yeah, so regret and guilt are not the same thing, particularly in Buddhism. So these variable mental factors are interesting because they really are completely based on what the motivation for them is. And then we have investigation and analysis, which are basically the same thing. It's just investigation is more coarse and analysis is more subtle. So investigation arises depending on intention or wisdom and examines an object in general, meaning like the meaning of impermanence is virtuous, yeah? Whereas investigating someone's faults with the intention to criticize is non-virtuous. Then analysis arises in dependence upon an intention or wisdom and analyzes the object in detail. So analyzing the nature of reality with a motivation of bodhicitta is virtuous, but analyzing how to make more efficient weapons with the intention to kill is destructive. So these two we're going to use today in our meditation, investigation and analysis. And we're going to do what's called analytical meditation. I think a lot of you are familiar with analytical meditation, but there might be a few people who aren't. So there's single-pointed meditation, like meditating on the breath, meditating on the mind itself, meditating on a mentally generated object. These are all examples of single-pointed meditation because you're taking just one thing and abiding steadily on it. And when you're distracted, you keep coming back to it, keep coming back to it. But it's just the one thing. Analytical meditation is one topic, and you're staying stably and consistently through a sequence that you've already planned before you've started and is from a valid source. And so you're staying on topic, but there's movement. Single-pointed meditation has more stability. Analytical meditation has more movement. So when you're doing an analytical meditation, you're inviting yourself to think, but you're inviting yourself to think in a very specific way. And if you ping off on tangents, you say, not right now, and you come back to the established topic that you decided. Now, if it's a reflection, if you're just having a think or you're having a discussion in a Dharma way, you don't need to be so strict. In fact, playing with ideas and how they relate to one another is really useful. But when you're actually in the analytical meditation, it's so important that you stay with the topic you started with. Otherwise, you create a habit of just finding escape routes. Yeah, so you're meditating on patience, and then you think about, I don't know, something related but not exactly the same, like compassion. It's not the time to meditate on compassion. It's the time to meditate on patience. So in this context, compassion becomes an obstacle, even though generally you want it. Does it make sense? Because you're trying to deepen. Yeah, you're not trying to go vast, you're trying to go deep when you're doing an analytical meditation. Study is different. Discussion is different. Reflection is different. In those times, find connections, go on different tangents, explore things as creatively as you want to. But analytical meditation needs to stay a bit disciplined. So you're using investigation and analysis with a positive motivation when you do these kind of meditations. So today we're going to do one on contrasting two mental factors. So I'll just unpack those for you briefly. They're really easy ones. So we're looking at the 11 virtuous mental factors now. And the one that we're going to zero in on is non-attachment. So non-attachment, an emergence from and non-desire for cyclic existence and the articles of cyclic existence. Right? You're like, well, what is that? And then immediately you look above and you're like, what? Shame and embarrassment. But remember, in Buddhism, they don't mean what you think they mean. Shame in Buddhism is avoiding misconduct due to one's own disapproval to restrain yourself. Embarrassment is avoidance of misconduct due to others' disapproval to restrain from misconduct. So it's not like a feeling of humiliation, or a feeling of devastation or feeling like you're terrible. Not at all. Doesn't have those connotations. Okay, so non-attachment is what we're going to look at. The reason I'm choosing that is it's one of the very misunderstood words in Buddhism. When you hear non-attachment or detachment, that goes together with Buddhism, right? You've heard that around, but often what people think it means is disengaged, right? Detachment does not mean disengaged. It doesn't mean disassociative. It doesn't mean disconnected, right? Non-attachment means not having attachment, right? So then you have to ask, what is attachment? Yeah, what is attachment? You have to contrast it. So we'll swap over. All right, so now we'll look at the root delusions and secondary afflictions. And just to review, afflictions are adventitious, meaning removable, right? They're additional and they're removable because the mind is clarity and awareness. So desire or attachment perceives an internal or external contaminated phenomena to be pleasant from the point of view of its own entity, and thereupon seeks it. It has the function of generating suffering. Okay, so attachment sees things in isolation, right? And the difficulty with attachment is that it has a few observations that are accurate. That's why it's so hard to get rid of, because you're not completely wrong. You're just limited in how you're seeing the thing. So if you're attached to a thing or like an object or a person or a situation, it's all the same. right? It's just the object is different. And what you've done is you've seen the good in it, which is good, but you've seen the good in it in isolation. You've seen the good in it divorced from the rest of the story of that object, that person, or that situation. And because of that, you crave it and you think it's giving you a good feeling in and of itself, divorced from context, right? And that you think that the happiness you get from coming into contact with it is from it. You've given all of the credit to the outside world. This substance, this situation, or this person is why I am happy, 100%, no nuance. That's what attachment does. So it limits the story to its most superficial and its most sensorial and its most seemingly obvious, and it's missing the spectrum of the story. Okay, so when you have attachment arising before anything bad happens, attachment can feel like love. And sometimes you don't even know if it's attachment or if it's love until you don't get what you want. Yeah, so you might think that you love a person, and you do sometimes love a person, and then it flickers back and forth from love to attachment. But it's attachment when the person doesn't do what you want and your reaction is rage. Then you knew it was attachment. If the person doesn't do what you want and you wonder what's wrong, and you wonder what happened, or you wonder where did our communication get tangled, and you're curious and you're concerned, then it was love. Yeah. But this is so confronting for us because we think that we love someone 100% of the time with little blips of anger here and there, or blips of annoyance and irritation. But actually, anger and love cannot abide at the same time because they are discordant. So we flicker back and forth, and we say, I loved you the whole time, but actually you had anger, you had the wish to harm, and then it settled and you loved them again. And it went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So attachment not getting what it wants opens the door to anger, and that anger can look a lot of different ways. It might not look like screaming, raging. It might look like withdrawal of affection. It might look like being frozen and silent treatment. It might look like depression, right? But when attachment doesn't get what it wants, it explodes or it implodes. And is so fundamentally unhealthy for us. But while it's getting what it wants, it's full of all sorts of conditions for pleasure. So it's very hard to get rid of until it gets thwarted. So if you can break the illusion before things get too much of a head of steam, you're going to suffer a lot less in life. So non-attachment means not giving in to the lie of attachment. Non-attachment means noticing the tendency for attachment and consciously widening your sphere of understanding and saying, what else is there to this story? Yes, they have this quality and this quality that I appreciate. Or yes, this situation is wonderful and useful in these ways. Or yes, this object is useful in those ways. That is all true. What else is true? Impermanence. Yeah. This person, this object, this situation will change. Yeah, it might get better, it might get worse, probably it'll go in waves because that's how life is. So there is not consistency, but attachment thinks there is. Attachment says who you are that one day when everything was rosy is who you really are, and any moment you don't live up to that, you're betraying me. It's so simplistic. Yeah. But that day did happen, but probably not exactly how you remembered it. Probably you added a soundtrack. Probably you made the temperature just right. Yeah, probably you forgot that your tummy hurt that day, or you had a cat scratch that was infected, or whatever else that was going on in your life that was unpleasant. You just conveniently forgot those bits were also there, and you just remember the rose-colored glasses moment in time and then are mad every time they don't live up to it. Yeah. So attachment is doomed to failure. It's doomed to failure. If it never sort of lost its footing, maybe you can live in it forever, but eventually reality dawns and then so much disappointment and so much thwarted expectation so often leads to anger or depression. So when you feel that sense of, I need this for my happiness, that's a warning sign. Yeah, doesn't mean it's necessarily attachment, but probably. Yeah, probably it's going that way. So when we do this kind of meditation where we're analyzing what is attachment, what is non-attachment, what is love, what is attachment, when you're doing these kind of analysis, you really need to look at what are the definitions of these things intellectually, then what is the definition of these things experientially? What does it feel like to be in either one of them and compare them to each other? You know, really asking yourself deep, individual, personal questions about what changes in my thinking when one of them is dominant as opposed to the other. Yeah. So really thinking here, okay, when you're upset with someone you love, it's often because you had attachment, not love, right? The upset is because the attachment didn't get what it wanted. Then you got sad or mad, either at them or yourself or both. All right, so then you're looking at these definitions. There's attachment, there's non-attachment, there's love. That's all easy on paper. Yeah, that's easy on paper. But then you need to get into, all right, let's make it kind of more colloquial for a minute. What do we understand so far? Love from the dictionary, an intense feeling of deep affection or a great interest. Attachment in a dictionary definition is affection, fondness, or sympathy. So already you're like, okay, well, what I thought attachment isn't what we're talking about in Buddhism. We're not talking about secure attachments like children should have when they have in their early developmental years. We're not talking about attachment parenting or attachment theory. We're not talking about liking something. That's not what we're saying when we use this word. So you're starting out with just tidying up your intellectual understanding. All right, so that's the dictionary definitions. Then what's the Buddhist definitions? Okay, love. The sincere wish that others be happy and the feeling that their happiness is more important than one's own, opposite in nature from attachment. And then attachment, a deluded mind that sees its object as attractive and sinks into it and cannot separate from it. One of the 6 principal delusions. Okay, so there's different ways of unpacking the definitions. There are longer and shorter versions of these definitions, but if you can get them into kind of bite-sized chunks, good enough to contrast, that's what you're going for in an analytical meditation. And then you go into an experiential thing. You're like, all right, well, what is love like? What is it like? What is it like? Sees good qualities or positive possibilities of a person, as well as their suffering and the negative behaviors that flow from it, both, and wants them to have happiness with no strings attached. Okay, that's the love we're talking about, that no strings attached. I just wish them well. Okay, attachment. Also sees the good qualities or positive possibilities of a person, object, or situation, but alone and forgets the big picture. And it exaggerates the impact on your personal happiness. So that's the key thing there. You're feeling into what is that exaggeration like, that elaboration, that stickiness, that neediness, that hope, that fantasizing that can lead into like obsessive thinking. It's exaggerating the impact on your personal happiness. It's not saying it has no impact on your personal happiness, but attachment exaggerates. So love, experientially, is calm and contented. It's steady and consistent. It has no expectations. Attachment is excited and restless and temperamental and has many expectations. So just kind of feeling into those, like, all right, when love is there, that steadiness, yeah, that contentedness, it's joyful, but it's not like bouncing up and down and all excited and restless. And when you're a teenager, you might take that excited, bouncy, restless feeling to be the sign that you're in love, or to be the sign that this decision is good, or to be the sign that this thing you have to buy. That the excitement itself is somehow a sign of something's validity. Have you had points in your life where you sort of took that bouncy, bouncy feeling as like, oh, that's the sign, right? When that very bounciness has a restlessness to it. And it has an illusion of urgency. Do you know that one? That illusion of urgency? I have to buy this now. Yeah, or I have to see them now. It's an illusion, right? Have you ever gone to buy something online and it's sitting in your shopping cart online, and then, oh, actually, I quick need to check the phone. I heard it ping, and then you go and you check the phone, and then you come back and you're like, I don't need to buy that. But if the phone hadn't rang or the text hadn't pinged, you would have gotten it. And you might have even gotten on a roll and bought a whole bunch of other things you didn't need. But, if you had the phone situation and then you came back and you saw the shopping cart and that little thing in there and you're like, yeah, I still need that, then it probably wasn't attachment, right? But attachment, if there's a circuit breaker, it somehow runs out of gas. It loses momentum. So if you feel like it might be attachment, interrupt yourself. Yeah, and then circle back when you feel calm and see, does it feel similarly important from a calm mind as it did from an excited mind? Because the nature of an affliction is that which makes the mind unpeaceful. Unpeaceful. So when there is agitation there, that is not something to trust. Yeah. You might have content in there that's still good, that you still want to keep. But when there's agitation there, wait until you settle and see if it's still true. This is kind of the essential thing when we're talking about minds and mental factors. A calm mind is more likely to be a positive or virtuous state of mind. An excited, agitated mind is more likely to be an afflicted one. So interrupt your own momentum when you're feeling that I have to. Yeah. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
I think it's very useful that you mentioned expectations. I find, I think a lot, I reflect a lot, and it goes back to the example you used for something else about giving of your time or your money, and so yeah, I find that as a good check. Can I help someone with what they're asking for, and they're not need to know about the outcome, no attachment to what they do with a gift or time, and then just I give because I want to and I know I can in certain amounts, but the moment I'm expecting some kind of result from them, then I've stepped over the mark. I'm not doing it for their good. I'm doing it because, as you say, because I'm attached to a certain outcome, and that's controlling, and it's goes in all sorts of directions. So I try to keep a check on myself, just to have, and I don't have really, if I don't give in a space where if I give in a space where I'm expecting or hoping for a certain outcome, then it's not giving from a place of love. It's conditional. So so I think for me it's useful that you've used the words conditional and expectation, and but I it's for me, I don't always get it right, but I try to, yeah, keep a check. Why am I doing this? Is it for me, or is it purely for someone else, and let them do whatever they wish with that gift.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. And when we're navigating these things, you know, important stuff will come up like, what about having agreements, or what is the role of loyalty, or, you know, secular ideas that are still important, like what is the role of boundaries, and when do boundaries become barriers? And, you know, these sort of things should come up, like, say you're in a relationship with someone, a friendship relationship, a romantic relationship, a colleague relationship, and you have a reasonable expectation that they're going to be on time to meet you, right? You decided to meet at this time, you expected them to come at that time. That's an agreement between people, and that can have the coloring of love, the coloring of attachment, or the coloring of non-attachment. But just on the surface, it's just an agreement. The mind you bring to it is very important, but it doesn't mean you have to overpower the fact that you guys decided on something together. And that if one of you fails to uphold it, there might be some sort of consequence, at least in terms of harmony. You know, and so this is delicate, isn't it? Because we come into things so certain that our opinion is the right one. How big a deal lateness is, for example, right? Like, how big a deal is it to be late to meeting someone? For some people, it's very like, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. And if you're late, you're incredibly rude. And if you're rude, that means you disrespect me. If you disrespect me, that means we cannot be friends. How dare you? Right? And for some people, it's like, you know, life comes up, whatever. Get here when you can. Hope you're safe. Right? And which one is right? Neither or both. It actually depends on the state of mind you bring to it. These things are culturally relevant, they're generationally relevant, they're, you know, weather relevant, you know, they're context relevant, all these things, but we are so sure that we're right. And the more really rock solid tight we are with that sense of righteousness, the more likely it is attachment is driving. And the more likely it is we're going to be so annoyed if they don't fulfill our expectation. So having the expectation is not the problem. It's the mind you're bringing to it. Does it make sense? Right? You still have worldly wisdom. Your worldly wisdom is still relevant, but noticing what happens when your expectations get thwarted, this is the key. Because if them getting thwarted results in agitation, they did not give you that agitation. You gave yourself that agitation. Yeah. And you can, you know, that's the thing. It's still your responsibility how things land. Yeah. Now, if you have non-attachment or you have love and someone doesn't live up to the expectation, you can still be assertive, right? By all means, be assertive. Be a clear communicator and say, hey, I thought it was going to be this time. What happened? If this keeps happening, here's what I'm going to need to do from my side in order to manage my time. What you do with yours is up to you. Coming from non-attachment or love, it's not an agitated conversation from your side, at least. Doesn't mean you can't be assertive, right? It's the mind you're bringing to these conversations. Yeah, Leonardo?
Yeah, like everything you're saying reminded me of s- he's a psychologist and he's also a neuroscientist, and he said that by the perspective of the brain, love is a habit, you know, because in a way that you learn how to be with that person, you learn how to appreciate the moments you spend with that person, and uh, the differences that like eventually they show up, and then you learn also to live with those differences. And he didn't really say he didn't really make the contrast with attachment, but he said passion, you know. And he
Yeah.
said that while passion is some kind of brainly speaking, you know, it's like a flood of neurons and hormones going there, and then the tendency for someone to make a wrong decision while uh, that flood is very likely to happen, you know. So that just reminded me all of that.
Definitely. It's like being drunk. Yeah. It's like being drunk. And if at least we can be a lucid drunk that's like, oh, I'm drunk, I better not send that email. You know, at least we can save some drama later on. Yeah. Yeah, Anna, go ahead.
Could you speak a little more to what you said, that anger and love can't coincide? I'm thinking about it in context of a lot of parents I've seen who get so angry with their children for not doing what they want to do. And sometimes it's because well, usually it's because they want to protect them.
Yeah.
And I just think that's an interesting thing to think about.
It is. And, you know, from the perspective of Tibetan philosophy, how long is a mental moment? Okay, how long is a mental moment? If you snap your fingers and divide that time into 64, 1/64th of a finger snap is the shortest mental moment. Okay, this is like, you know, whatever, esoteric Tibetan Buddhism, whatever, ask your Geshe for details. But that's a short period of time, right? 1/64th of a finger snap. In that tiny incremental point of time, you can actually wish harm on your dear child that you love so much. In that moment, you don't love them. In that moment, you actually do have wish to harm, even if that harm is just through your words, you want them to come into some submission and you want to dominate the state that they're in. You know, it's a short period of time, but it is not love, and they do not love them in that tiny fraction of time. And then it probably very quickly becomes, and I want you to be happy, and I want you to be safe, and I want you to, you know, be practical and wise. And that carries on for a few seconds. Yeah. And then comes again, but how dare you not listen to my good advice? And how dare you do the thing I've told you a million times? And then they're angry again. And, you know, in the course of one argument, the flicker between anger and love, when you're having this kind of interaction with a loved one, is fascinating if we were to track it, but it's probably, you know, bzzz, and we feel like, no, there's a baseline of love and blips of anger. No, it's not like that. They're completely discordant. They're completely contradictory. And two completely contradictory states of mind can't abide in the same mind at the same time. And even from the perspective of the brain, that seems to be true as well. There's recent studies by neuroscientists that seem to validate that. So the physical brain and the mental mind both have that characteristic. And that is very confronting because we don't want to think we ever wish harm on our loved ones. Now, anger is one thing, upset is another. Upset is kind of like it hasn't resolved into an affliction specifically yet. It's just got the door wide open for one. Yeah. So it might be that that upset, that agitation is there and you're a bit shaky and you're wobbly and you're getting flushed, but it hasn't turned into complete anger yet. It's just the door is open for it. And, you know, parents are amazing. Sticking with kids in their developmental years is an epic, epic spiritual practice if you let it be. And, you know, I really take my hat off to people that raise children. But, you know, in some of those moments, you're really mad at your child for not listening to you. That is a thwarted expectation. You expected them to listen to you. That expectation was based on attachment. The attachment had the exaggerated idea that your child will listen to you consistently. That was a plan doomed to failure, right? Is your child going to listen to you consistently? No, evidence the whole time you've known them has shown contrary, right? Sometimes they
Even
listen,
when they're 30 years old.
right? Right. And so that's the weird thing, though, is that we expect some sort of stability from very unstable little creatures. Yeah, and never mind, it seems to last even when we're adults. How embarrassing. you know, but that is the sign there, is that, okay, the parent really thought this time the child will listen. Why would they think that? Right?
Mhm.
Too many conditions involved, you know, it's a miracle they ever hear anything. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
you know, when you think about like parenting strategies that seem effective, particularly maybe those in indigenous cultures that haven't been colonialized too badly, you know, they're just together with their child always, with just this kind of unconditional positive regard. They're not coddling them, they're not validating them constantly, they're just together with them, holding the space with unconditional positive regard so beautifully, and then just getting on with life. And they're not like all up in their business, right? And they're not sort of like, I don't know, babying them, but they're also in no way neglecting them. And sometimes, you know, you see kids in those documentaries just sort of happily playing in the dirt with rocks with each other, and just, it's amazing. And how do they get that way? They just got flooded with love, that's all. And maybe we've made it too complicated, and we have all these expectations on these kids that they can't possibly live up to developmentally. And then we're constantly mad at them showing that they can't, but they never could. You know, give them a break. So gently, gently, but you know, even just thinking about your relationship with other adults and how much thwarted expectations come in, and that those expectations were doomed to be thwarted because they were exaggerated possibilities that couldn't ever be. They were attachments. Attachment exaggerates. So it's better if you break the lie and you break the spell first, because then you can let it dissolve. If they're the one that shows the lie of your own attachment or breaks the spell of your sort of haze of attachment, then you're so mad at them for taking your joy, even though they didn't do it. Better if you do it for yourself when it's smaller, right? Less to sober up from. Yeah. Ladon, go ahead.
Yes, hi, Vera. Talking about children and all the attachment we have with them, love and attachment, I was asking myself if you can explain about attachment that we can and karma that we bring with ourselves to this life. Is it karma bring more attachment or aversion? It's obvious to the situation. And how can we like detach ourselves from those past karmas?
You mean like karmic connections with other people, or
Yeah,
karmic?
with like talking about our kids, like for example,
Yeah.
I have two kids and I
Yeah.
think about them differently.
Yeah.
From one, my expectation are very high,
Yeah.
and the other is just like normal.
Yeah.
We love our children the same, but the attachment makes us like more demanding, and one of my kids looks like my father physically,
Yeah.
and I've been all the time like having, because I was in worshiping my father all the time from my childhood, and then I think that I bring this to
Yeah.
my life, and
Yeah.
it's so like even physically it's obvious,
Yeah.
but the result is not. It's very tangled, as you said,
Yeah.
but I feel it that it comes from something else. There's something more like a wind that bring me to the situations that I cannot easily take my distance from.
Yeah. That makes
So
sense. Yeah.
what is karma in all those?
Well, you know, karma is going to come up next week. But no, karma is an extremely hidden phenomena, right? So I cannot tell you all of the tiny, tiny things that make you feel this way, but there are things that are obvious from this life, and then there are things that are from past lives, both, right? And the
Mhm.
things of this life, I think you're very clear on. You have self-awareness, you understand basic psychology, you know about transference and projection, you know, all of that is clear to you, and you're doing your best to work with it.
Mhm.
You know, that's this life stuff. And we all have relationships like that where somebody reminds us of someone else and we project stuff on them, you know,
Mhm.
Psych 101. But why is it so much more with some relationships than others? The short answer is because of familiarity. You've met them
Mhm.
more times, more lives, more recently.
Mhm.
Yes, you just fell into a routine with them when you met again in this life. Yeah, that's the short answer karmically, is that you just been in this dynamic a lot.
Like
Left off.
habitually. Yeah, yeah.
You pick up where you left off.
So
So
more
yeah.
work to
Well, it becomes
we have to
more
more work.
thing, right? To look at what are the unhealthy things in these relationships that are so karmically magnetized, you know, where it just feels like, you know, some people, when the second you meet them, you feel like, I know you. What's your name? You know, you feel that, right? And
Yeah.
with those relationships, in a way, there's more pressure to untangle the unhealthy parts because
Mhm.
probably there is no escape from them.
Mhm.
You will just keep bumping into each other and bumping into each other life after life after life. And hopefully you will bring more and more health to the relationship each cycle. And hopefully they will be working on themselves as well, but there's no guarantee. They have different conditions and different things around. But if you bring more health to the situation, it can only get a little better at least. Yeah,
Mhm.
it will get worse if you bring more health to it. Yeah. So this is confronting, right? Because there's a lot of people in our life we probably don't particularly want to meet again. But if we had that like zap of familiarity when we first met them
Mhm.
again, you know, you'll be different people, but not really that different. Different bodies, different socialization, same patterns. Yeah.
I mean, if we are at our attachment, which is mixed with love,
Yeah.
brings some kind of personality which we worshipped in another time,
Mm.
bring them back again, and it might be positive because but you know, love and aversion and attachment bring us to certain karma, certain personality. But
Yeah. Just work on it, you know,
yeah,
just like everything else, you know, it's like if you have a certain kind of boss in every single workplace, right?
all
It's
the
like,
time the
right?
same. Yeah.
Who really created that, right? So
Me.
if you can work on it with one relationship, it's not like then you have to do it with every single relationship with every single sentient being across all of time and space. If you get good at working with your attachment, that will
Mhm.
benefit every single relationship. You can use one as kind of the main one you're working on it with, but think in terms of, may the health I bring to this relationship magnify, have a ripple
Mhm.
effect. It does, you know, so guess have some faith in that. But we'll go ahead and have a 5-minute break and then we'll do the meditation on just what we've
Thank
been.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. 5 minutes. Okay, come on back. All right, so we're going to be using any number of mental factors. Of course, all 5 omnipresent, many of the object ascertaining, and 2 of the variable. But you don't need to remember all of that, but just know that is happening. And start by being with the body, just the body, just this form aggregate. The feeling of you physically sitting here. Just let that physical awareness ground you. And let your mind scan up and down your spine, inviting your spine to come into alignment and balance. And then let your focus shift to that spacious clarity of the mind, just for a few minutes, allowing surface distractions to settle, just being with that sense of emphasizing the primary mental consciousness, the sky, not the clouds. Like resting in non-reactivity. Different thoughts and impressions will arise. Different sensory experiences are felt, and you simply choose not to follow them. Just keep coming back to that reflective clarity of the mind. Like emphasizing the big blue sky, not concerned with the weather. And as the surface distractions settle, come back to your motivation of altruism, thinking I'm doing this meditation in order to develop my mind so that I can be of greatest benefit to all. And then let your mind move into analysis. And just take a minute and let your mind clarify the difference between love and attachment. Thinking that love sees good qualities or positive potentials of a person, as well as their suffering and the negative behaviors that flow from it. Sees both and wants them to have happiness with no strings attached. Just first letting your mind analyze intellectually. What are the words that describe love from a Buddhist perspective? Love wishes others to have happiness. And then clarify attachment intellectually. Also sees the good qualities or potentials of a person or an object or a situation. Alone forgets the big picture. Exaggerates the impact on your personal happiness. So desirous attachment exaggerates. The good it sees is overblown, out of context, excessively emphasized. Clarify it for yourself. What is that Buddhist perspective on the concept of attachment? And experientially let yourself contrast them. When love is driving, your own experience is what? And just let yourself feel into those times where you know it's been really wanting the other person to have happiness. That calm, contented, joyful sense. So open, without expectations or pressure. Steady and consistent. Just clarifying for yourself, what is love like when it's real love? And then contrast that with attachment. The way attachment is excited, restless. The way it gets temperamental. So many expectations. That illusion of urgency. That craving It might want the other person to have happiness so that they give us happiness, like a business deal. So many expectations. And so just let your mind move back and forth between the two, letting yourself compare and contrast them to each other. What are you like when each of these is driving? How are they different? And then without falling into some story of self-loathing or some story of excuses, just gently ask yourself, what is the harm I've created under the influence of attachment? What is the harm I've created to myself or to others when I've given in to attachment? Just examine very honestly, but with a little objectivity. Don't get lost in the story. Just assess what attachment might have led to in your past. The pain you might have given yourself, the pressure you might have put on others. Let yourself really explore it. What has attachment done? Thinking about the way attachment might fuel your own anxiety, your inflated hopes, your irrational fears, all fed by this exaggeration of attachment. And knowing even more deeply than before that attachment is something you do not want to feed. Let your mind shift and think of the benefit love has had in your life. When it's been actual love driving, what has been the benefit to yourself and to others? When it was a true wish for their happiness. Looking into your memories. Thinking of the calm and the safety and the joy that your love has brought to situations, to individuals, the contentment it brings to yourself. Let yourself remember the advantage of living in this mental factor, this positive state of mind. That warm, steady, open, joyful place within yourself, as well as the ambiance and positive conditions you bring to others. That this love is how you want to live. And even though you already knew that, let it come further up to the surface of your mind. Just reinforcing your desire to live that way. Finish the meditation by thinking, may all living beings, including myself, have happiness and the causes of happiness. And may all of them fulfill their fullest potential. Enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. We dedicate Jantu Semcho Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyuchi, Ke Panyam Pame Payang, Gone Gondu Pelwa Sho. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Venerable Yönten.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you. Thank you, babe.
Thanks, Gabrielle.
Thank you.